Good afternoon and welcome to this planning committee and on this really foul day. So I'm sorry I couldn't give you better weather for it, but my name's Councillor Gary Marsh. I'm the chairman of the planning committee. To my left is Councillor Kennedy, who's my vice chairman. To my right is Nick Rogers, head of development management. To his right is Paula Slynn, who's our solicitor. To her right is Joseph Swift, who's one of the planning officers. And the members of the committee are in front of you, are going to make the decision. And the two fine fellow people in the corner and Lucinda over there work for Democratic Services. They make us do everything correct. Right, so item 1 on the agenda is to receive apologies for absence. We think we're all here, which is good. Item 2, to receive declarations of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. I think Councillor de Bell, you said you've got a... Could you press your button, please?
I haven't seen the second part of the agenda, but I believe that declaring interest in an item on there because I live in very close proximity to the particular case.
Yeah, that's it. You did it last time, same thing. And I think that's it. Right, item 3 on the agenda. Just to confirm, after our last meeting, the committee requested that I write to the head of regulatory services regarding a member from the NHS to come. I did circulate it about the day after I've done it to all the members. So it is coming in front of the scrutiny committee. I think we said it was January? Yeah. It is coming towards in January. And all members are entitled to come and express their concerns to the NHS regarding that. So with that update, can I ask if everybody's agree with the minutes? Everything's okay?
Yes.
Okay, and I will sign the minutes and give it to you later, Ellen. Okay, thank you. Item 4 is to consider any items I agree to take as urgent business. I have none. So we now go to the reasons why we're here for, which is item 5, DM 220752, Earthingley, College Road, Ardingly. This is yours, Joe.
Thank you, Chairman. We have no updates on this application. The application is seeking planning permission for the erection of a detached 5-bedroom house and 2 semi-detached 5-bedroom houses with associated parking and access from College Road, Ardingly. The application site is shown here, outlined in red. It is set to the northwestern side of College Road, with the dwellings Earthingley and Pilbream Cottage to the north. We have the dwelling Greenfield to the northwest, and within the blue parcel of land there is 2 dwellings which are currently being constructed and nearing completion. The access road that we can see just here actually surrounds the site on all sides as it goes round the plot and comes back out onto College Road. And to the south of the site, beyond that, it leads on to the sports pitches for Ardingly College. The application site is designated within the Mid Sussex District Plan as being within the countryside. It's also an area of outstanding natural beauty and within 7 kilometres of the Ashdown Forest. We have a site plan here on the left that shows how the proposal will be accommodated on the site, with the detached dwelling located on the south-eastern side towards the closest to the highway, and then the pair of semi-detached to the northwest of that. On the site plan here as well, we can see that we've got the 2 properties which are currently under construction shown, so you can see how it relates to those properties. And from the plan on the right-hand side, we can see it in relation to the built-up area boundary. While not contiguous with the built-up area boundary because of the highway between, we can see obviously that following the allocated site, the boundary was extended on the southeastern side of the road and extends a lot further down. The application has been supported with an access plan, which provides details of how it can achieve 47 metres in each direction. The proposal also includes a footway, and these details have been secured by condition and are considered to be acceptable by West Sussex County Council Highways. The landscaping plan here shows, we can see here at the southeastern end, the land levels drop down towards the highway, so the site is slightly raised. However, the proposal is seeking to retain a large amount of the vegetation. In addition, it's seeking to put some additional planting in this area. Furthermore, the proposal is mainly seeking to retain the vegetation along the surrounding, on the rear and side boundaries. Following amendments to the scheme, the council's tree officer is now not raising any objections to the proposal in relation to the trees. We have the front and rear elevations here for members. It is considered that the proposal is an appropriate design, size and scale. It's in keeping with the wider locality. The semi-detached pair is of a similar design as the current properties being built to the northwest. And obviously on the rear elevations as well, just to highlight that all of the dwellings will be incorporating PV panels, together with a number of other sustainability measures that have been set out within section 12.54, page 26 of the report. And just for context, here we have the proposed side elevations as well. So the following slides show the ground floor. We can have the ground floor here and the first floor. There's no concerns with the relationships of the windows between the two properties at first floor level. It's not quite clear because it's quite small on the plan here, but the main first floor windows facing each other are serving either bathrooms, en suites or dressing rooms, so they're not main habitable rooms. So, as I said, there's no concern of overlooking between the two properties. Now we have some photos from the site and surrounding. So the first photo is looking at the access point with the proposed application site just up to the left. The second photo is looking south down College Lane, with the third photo looking north up College Lane, and the final photo here is taken from the access to the allocated sites, the dwellings on the opposite side of College Road. Just to point out from these photos, obviously it's very well screened along this frontage, and as mentioned, that is to be retained and includes further planting. Okay, within the final set of photos, this is just going round the sort of access road which surrounds the site. The first one is looking back towards College Road with the allocated site that's been developed on the opposite side. The second photo is just looking on the site, currently it just has hoardings on it. The next photo is looking northwest. You can see in the side here just the currently under construction dwellings nearing completion. The fourth photo here is looking south towards the Ardingly College sports fields, and then the final two photos are looking along the rear access road and back towards the site from the entrance. The main reasons have been set out within the report, and it is recommended that, subject to the completion of a satisfactory Section 106 legal agreement or legal undertaking to secure the required level of SAM and SAN contributions, planning permission should be granted, subject to the conditions set out in Appendix A. We have a recommendation B that if by the 7th of March 2024, the applicants have not submitted a satisfactory signed Section 106 legal agreement and or legal undertaking, securing the necessary SAM and SAN contributions, then planning permission shall be refused at the discretion of the divisional leader for planning and economy for the following reason. The proposal does not adequately mitigate the potential impacts on the Ashdown Forest SPA and therefore would be contrary to the Conservation and Habitats and Species Regulation 2017, Policy DP 17 of the Mid Sussex District Plan, Policy ARD 4 of the Neighbourhood Plan and paragraph 181 of the National Planning Policy Framework. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Joe. I'm the ward councillor, so I shall kick off on this one. We have spoken, I spoke to, I think Roger's the head of planning, development control on Monday, and he has approached Andrew Marsh from policy with the view at some point the built-up area boundary will include the new houses and these houses that we've got in front of us today. If there's any further south, is actually Arderney College, and I'm not going to build on the playing fields there. I do have, in the past, have concerns about 5-bedroom houses, but I'm also acutely aware that on edge of all villages, we do allow bigger houses, and all neighbourhood plans acknowledge this. And so I don't have any problems with this. I know the parish council aren't happy because it's in the countryside, but literally the boundary will be amended to include these properties at some point during the district plan iteration as it goes through Regulation 19 and examination. So therefore, I don't have any issues with it. They're a good design, and I move as to support it, and I'm looking for a seconder.
I'm happy to second the proposal.
Right, does anybody wish to speak? Well, Councillor Henwood.
How about putting in a condition, as we've said in the past, about grey water recycling, a provision for grey water recycling, please? I noticed you said they're going to have PVs. Is that adequate? I was also just concerned about the trees.
No, there's no problem with the trees, because the tree officer, there was problems.
They've amended the scheme.
Yes,
I
they
read
have.
that.
So
That's no problem with the trees.
no problems whatsoever.
So sufficiently to have the photovoltaics, presumably it will be exposed to the roof enough. Now, yeah, my question, Gary, can we put in a condition about having a provision for grey water recycling?
Joe, could you answer that one, please?
Thank you. In relation to the sustainability statement, they have detailed that they're going to achieve a figure of 109.6 litres per person per day, which is in accordance with our requirements. They've also set out they're going to have a number of measures in terms of the water consumption, including rainwater butts, and in terms of the conditions, we have got condition 9 on page 32 requiring it to be carried out in accordance with the sustainability statement. So we have got a requirement for them to include water butts already.
Okay. So, Chairman, our new district plan policy, of course, is going to require 85 litres per person per day. So possibly by the time this comes into being, maybe we should look forward and plan for the future. And actually, the water consumption here complies with our present district plan. But can we not sort of be forward thinking and say, you know, get down to 85 litre per person per day?
I would say no, because our district plan hasn't even gone out to the second consultation, hasn't gone through examination yet. So, and the people who are building the other two houses are more likely to be building these, and they're all on site with all their equipment, so they'll just literally finish those houses and go straight onto it.
Okay.
So I hear where you're coming from, but the permission will be at least a
now.
year
Okay.
before we get to our district plan.
And there has been quite a few comments in the report about concern about water accumulation and water runoff. This is what prompted me to ask the condition about having some of the grey water provision, just as a condition. I think it's good to highlight these conditions.
It is. I'm going to get
Okay,
Nick
thank you.
to answer that
Thank you.
question.
Thank
Could
you,
you switch
Chairman.
yours off, please? Thank you.
Yeah, a very sort of entirely valid point raised by Councillor Henwood. But we have to do with the current application against our current planning policies. And the applicants have submitted on page 26 and 27, we're outlining their sustainability statement. What they're proposing to do meets current planning policy. We can't up that. So they're meeting policy now. You can't give any weight at the moment to our future district plan. Fingers crossed, that will go through and do the rounds, and in future we will be able to use enhanced sustainability standards. But at the moment, we do have to take into account the policy of the current plan, and this does meet our planning policies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I just, looking back at the previous permissions, 8, 15, 16 and 17 on page 13, and I wondered how, I couldn't find any sort of mention of that, and I wondered how the previous permissions impact on this one, and, you know, is it an improvement on these previous permissions, or are we going to go on with more applications? I sincerely hope not. And my second question is about Joseph comment about 1254. I'm not sure what it was in relation to the solar, and it says solar is considered as part of the SAP, Part L, Building Regs Part L1A calculations, and also it says probably air source heat pumps. I wonder if you could clarify. I saw the PVs on the drawings, but is there more clarity on that, please? Thank
Could you
you.
answer that, please? Could you switch off your microphone, please? Thank you.
Yeah, in relation to the planning history, that it covers, because the site covers these two plots. There's a lot of history on this plot, which is from the two that have been approved. This current site has not had permission for dwellings previously. It's just the wider site, because it is the two sites together, if that makes sense, that we've had the two there. In terms of the sustainability, the proposal will include the PV panels. In relation to the heat source pumps, they have indicated they're potentially looking to put them in, but it hasn't confirmed or not as such. It's just if it comes down to it, they will make a decision on that. But in terms of the policy, it's considered that they have given regard to the sustainability measures with the PV panels, that it would meet that policy and is acceptable as it is. Thank you.
Councillor Cherry? You don't need to, switched off. Put it back on again.
Sorry. Yeah, I've got two questions. One concerning parking. Obviously, these are 5-bedroomed houses, and each house has got 3 off-road parking spaces. Well, if we think with the number of houses, we would have maximum of 25 people living in these houses, and we've got actual parking for 15 people. So we've got we're 10 parking spaces short. Is there sufficient provision in the plans for these additional parking places, please?
It's the standard what you'd expect. Highways have not raised an issue
No.
with, and unfortunately, if highways don't raise an issue, we, from a practical point of view, is one thing, but it's a technical, and unfortunately, they're policy compliant from highways. I understand the question, and I fully support your question, but highways have said there's no problems.
Okay, yeah, and just another question on the houses themselves. Will they have, I couldn't see whether they're going to have built-in charging points for use of electric cars. Was it
Yeah,
there?
I asked that question on Monday in my
Right.
talk through, and it falls under building regulations. Yep, correct, building
that's-
regulations. So that's now in force, so all new houses will have it.
Oh, that's good to know. I shall mentally note that.
So you
And
don't have
just-
to ask it anymore.
No, and just one more small question. Solar, will solar, I know you've spoken a bit about solar panels and bricks. Will they form part of the construction? And then, later on in the report, it describes passive solar gain. And I wondered if perhaps you could clarify what that means.
You got me on that one.
Passive-
Can you switch off your microphone, please? Thank you.
Yes, so the proposal will include solar panels. In relation to passive solar gain, it's all in relation to sort of the openings and using the natural sort of potentially southern-facing windows to sort of generate heat in the property from the sun. So using the sun's heat as best possible to heat the property rather than rely on sort of other sources. So it's using the natural resources to try and gain heat.
No problems. Okay, I see no more speakers, so I've made a recommendation for it to be approved. My vice chairman has seconded it. So can we now go to the vote? Green, councillor Henwood, you've...
No, I beg your pardon, I was
Oh, you're going for it, were you then? Right. Enthusiastic. So green for support, red you don't, and yellow you're abstaining. One's not pressed, please tell me it's not me.
Is that me?
You've done it now. Yep, we've got a full house. That has been approved unanimously. Thank you. That has been given permission. Thank you very much. A and B, that is, as Joseph read out, that's if they haven't done the necessary section 106 and the Ashdown Forest stuff, you've agreed to both of them. Okay, thank you. Right, this is now item 6, which is 36 Hurst Road, Essex. And this is yours again, Joseph. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just take members through the update sheet. Members have received an additional representation letter sent from number 38 Hurst Road. In addition, we have added a condition on levels to the decision. The application seeks planning permission for the erection of one 5-bedroom house with car parking. The application is before committee as it's been called in by Councillor Hatton and Councillor Burr-Green for being contrary to policy 1 of the neighbourhood plan, safeguarding local gaps and coalition. The application site is shown here outlined in red. It is located to the west of 36 Hurst Road, the host dwelling, and is to the east of Twinham, which is a more recently constructed sort of contemporary style dwelling. The site currently forms part of the garden of 36 Hurst Road and has a number of small outbuildings within it. And this site is designated within the Mid Sussex District Plan as being within the countryside. Here we can see the site plan a bit more zoomed in. The proposed dwelling is seeking to have a shared access with the host dwelling number 36. This would allow for the established screening to the frontage to be retained. West Sussex Highways have raised no objection to the proposed access and parking arrangements of the proposal. It is also considered that the plot size is consistent with those within the locality, and although, just to highlight, the proposal does look a lot bigger than the neighbouring dwellings, it's just to highlight that this section to the rear is just a single-storey addition, which will become clear even more clear in the following slide. Again, you can see at the rear, this is the single-storey addition I mentioned. It is considered that the proposal is an appropriate design. It's picking up on features such as the bay window, which is seen on the host property, while also incorporating a number of sort of more modern aspects, which seem to sort of form an interchange between the host property and Twynham to the east. Here we have the proposed floor plans. The proposal is seeking to have accommodation on 3 levels, the ground, first and second floor. And again, we can see we have a number of PV panels to be contained on the roof slope of the proposed dwelling. Due to the change in land levels, with the land dropping down from west to east, as well as from south to north, the proposed dwelling will be sat at a slightly lower height than the host dwelling. And due to the retention of the screening along the front, it is not considered that it be widely visible, with it being an infill between the 2 existing dwellings in an area that is currently residential curtilage. It is not considered that it would impact on the local gap between Hassocks and Hasby Point. And we have a number of photos here. So looking west along the frontage and east, and then looking in through the access point, just to sort of highlight again, this is a very well vegetated area to the frontage. And the final photos are for within the site. The first one is looking towards the eastern boundary with Twynham. The next photo is looking north with the host property on the right-hand side, and again the vegetation which is screening the Hurst Road. And the next photo is looking north. As you can see, there is quite a drop in levels at the rear of the site, and the final photo is looking along the western front boundary of number 38. Although within the countryside, the proposal was not considered to conflict with the countryside protection and sustainability aims of policy DP12 and DP15 of the Mid Sussex District Plan. The proposal, due to its infill nature and screen, is not considered to compromise the character of the countryside or the local gap. The proposal would provide one additional house in a location that is considered to be sustainable, with access along a lit footpath to bus stops and within walking distance of the train station. And it's also considered acceptable in relation to design, size and scale, setting of the South Downs National Park, neighbouring amenities, highway access and parking, sustainable construction, drainage, ecology, space standards in the Ashdown Forest, and is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in Appendix A. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Before we go to the speaker, I'm going to ask Nick Rogers just to make a quick comment, please. We've only just noticed.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just refer members, please, to paragraph 12.58, which concerns sustainability. We've had a very full sustainability statement submitted with the application, and 12.59 says these matters could be controlled by condition. Just flicking through the recommended conditions, and I can't see a condition at the moment recommended requiring compliance with the sustainability statement. So I'd recommend an additional, should members go on planning permission, I would recommend an additional condition requiring compliance with a sustainability statement.
These are normal.
Yeah, if it's a standard condition that we tend to use, yeah.
Okay.
Unless Joe corrects me, and I'm wrong.
Right, we have one speaker speaking in support, Tim Rodway. Yes, we do know you. You've been here many times, so when you start to speak, you'll see on the screens a clock ticking down. And when you get to 30 seconds, I'll just remind you, you've only got 30 seconds. You've only got 2 minutes, but as you know that anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, members. This planning application proposes a new dwelling on garden land to the side of an existing residential property. A full range of surveys have been undertaken and these have informed the proposals. The application has been assessed by the Council's consultees and no objections have been raised. Whilst the site lies within the gap between Hassocks and Hurstbeer Point, there exists a continuous uninterrupted ribbon of development between the two villages. The proposal is for an infill property on previously developed land to the east side of number 36, and it would not prejudice the openness of the countryside or lead to coalescence. Indeed, the extra wide garden was created by the original builder of the houses in the 1950s so that he could eventually build his own house. So the proportions of the plot lend themselves to the inclusion of an infill dwelling without overdevelopment. It is noted that adjacent to the east of the site is a new dwelling of modern design, which was granted planning permission in 2016. And 3 new houses were also approved at nearby number 27 Hurst Road in 2018. This planning application is for a detached dwelling set within a street scene that is characterised by predominantly large detached houses fronting onto Hurst Road. We agree with your planning officer in that the new plot is appropriate in width and depth and is therefore of a size that is consistent with those within the area. Further, the dense screening of trees and bushes means that the house will be almost completely hidden from the street scene. The proposed dwelling would be of a design that would sympathetically relate to the surrounding area, proposing a mixture of traditional and contemporary features that reflects those neighbouring. The dwelling will include energy-efficient, renewable technology. Consideration has been given to windows and positioning of the new house, and spacing retained to neighbouring properties, including Twickenham to the east. There would be no material harm to neighbours' living conditions. When considering the planning balance, there are clear benefits of providing a new dwelling in this sustainable location. The proposal would comply with the overarching aim of District Plan DP12, which seeks to maintain the quality of the rural and landscape character of the district. Thank you.
Thank you. The eagle-eyed among you would have seen they had 3 minutes up on the screen. That's for our district planning. Aidan, you've just seen it as well. Could we adjust it to 2 minutes if you can? Right. Before I open the debate, this is a general comment. Normally when members call in a committee, out of courtesy, they really should attend to give us the reasons why they called it into committee. And unfortunately, the 2 councillors didn't. And my vice chair and myself were at a loss because why they weren't here. So, do anybody wish to debate this, or you're happy with Councillor Brown? I see your finger go in for it.
Thank you, Chairman. I was struck by the large massing of the. Sorry, we've got a little problem with my.
Yeah, it's gone off.
Might be a problem with my hearing aids. Is it solved now? Oh, no, it hasn't. Maybe I'll come back to you.
Okay, if you could. Councillor Henwood.
Yes, please. Now, I'm very disturbed by the building line because it's much forward to the actual established building line, and I believe in one of our, I have it written down somewhere, DG 13, Design Guide 13, it mentions about establishing the building line. So that building line is much forward than the other building lines, and I think we should be sticking to building line. You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Yeah, okay. So I have a question about that, because Design Guide 13 certainly says we should, stick to that if possible. I also have a huge question about that extension in the front. Now, in one of the pictures, you had 2 cars parked inside. Is that right, Mr. Swift? The forward. So what is that? A single story building?
Joe, could you put up the site plan, please, so we
Yeah.
understand what Councillor Henwood is
Now, if you go back to the other one, which shows that one, see, it's kind of like, on the right-hand side, I see one car parked, correct. Now, what is that building that it's in front of? Is that a single story? Yes, sir, that's one. What is that?
It is two-storey, so as we can see on the floor plan, the ground floor is garages and the first floor is a bedroom.
So I find that, I know there's nothing we can do about it, but how many times have we had garages now that are being changed into habitable rooms? Okay, so car parking, so we got, how much car parking's allowed? We got 2 in the garage.
Yeah. You need to go through the chairman
I
to
beg your
ask those
pardon.
questions.
Chairman,
Yeah.
could you inquire as to how many car parking facilities, not counting the garage, there's a 2-car garage, how many parking facilities?
You do count 2 cars in a garage as parking.
That's sufficient for a 5, 6-bedroomed house?
Again, highways have not questioned
No, they
it.
haven't objected, okay. Then I have another question. I read through several comments from residents, obviously. Where, Chairman, could you tell me where they talk about these very valuable veteran trees near the site? Now, would the planning officer know where we're talking about?
He probably does, but again, we have had no objections from our tree officer.
No, but except you've had suggestions that they have a nice protection and the veteran and not just the 15 meters as usual. So that's what I was curious about, whether we're going to allow, with this development, a large protection area?
Well, Joe, could you, normal condition, I assume?
Yeah, I'll pick up on a couple points there.
Okay, thank you.
Just in terms of the first point, in terms of the building line, you can obviously see the line is obviously in front of number 36, but you can obviously see that the property is almost in line with Twinham. We do have a 7.6 metre setback from the highway, so even though it is protruding forward, it's still considered with the screen in there that there will be a significant setback, that it won't be right up onto the boundary and won't impact on the sort of open character of that frontage. In terms of the car parking, so as the plan shows, they have the double garage. Also on the site plan, there is an additional space for 2 cars and turning to the frontage, so they'll have 4 cars, and West Sussex Highways have been consulted and are happy with the proposed parking and turning arrangement on site. And in terms of the veteran trees, it is in relation to the trees at the frontage which are to be retained. And we've also put a condition on this, condition 8, requiring full details of the hard and soft landscaping, which will include indications of all the existing trees, and details of those to be retained together with their measures for protection during the course of the development.
So Chairman, is there, when we talk about protection, if they're veteran trees, is there anything, I appreciate the condition, is there anything that would actually designate what protection, the level of protection they should be given, like not necessarily 15 meter, but further, as they're veteran trees, as recommended by the Woodlands Trust?
No.
No, so we can't really do that within that condition.
We've got 2 conditions that you've asked questions about, and I'm just going to get Mr. Rogers to
Okay.
do both of them. One was about the car parking and future stuff, and the other one is about your trees.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. On condition 5, page 79, and Councillor Henwood's point about garages tend to be converted and you lose the space for other uses. Condition 5 does actually say there these spaces shall thereafter be retained at all times for their designated purpose. So we have got control over those spaces, you would need to come back to the council with a planning application should anybody want to use the garage for anything other than parking in the normal garage. And on condition 8, as Joe mentioned, it will need a full landscaping scheme, and that will include protections for existing trees, fencing around tree, that sort of thing, just to make sure that there is no impact on existing landscaping, existing trees as a result of this development.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are you happy with that?
Not really.
Oh, well, can't win them all. Councillor Brown.
Thank you for letting me come back.
That's okay, you haven't started yet.
No, I'm on the same policy, recommendation 8. I was thinking about these trees, of which I noticed there are 2 specimen trees in there, and the site depends to a large extent, in my view, to the maintenance of those trees and the sort of what planners like to call the verdant nature of the road. And and it isn't, whilst it's probably not the strategic, well, it is a strategic gap of sorts between Hurst and Essex. So that's really, really important to my view, because this house is, if those were lost at some time, or you were just left with the trees, the 2 specimen trees, then it would be quite impactful, I think, on Hurst Road. So I'd like some. Really, I don't see the assurance there. You just mentioned it, Chairman, it would be fenced off during the, but I'm not really completely happy, because it's such a massive, massive development, really, in relation to the other houses. So that's my sort of concern. Thank you.
Okay. They're not TPO'd. That's tree preservation orders, and there's not a conservation area, so there's nothing to stop the developer, the landowner, actually at this point in time, cutting down all those trees, which we wouldn't want them to do. But we have got some protection on those trees during the construction phase and any other subsequent planting for up to 5 years. So, as we all know, a person can cut down their tree at any time. Would they want to do that? Probably not, because if you look at the photograph, Joe, could you just put the photograph up of the street scene? See, you really don't want to lose that. And why would they want to lose that? Because they've got nice shielding. So I understand where you're coming from, but it's down to other people to put a TPO on that, because it's not a conservation area, so it's down to the people who own it or somebody else requesting it. And even if you request it, there's no guarantee you're going to get a TPO on there anyway. So I understand where you're coming from, but why you've got to give some benefit of the doubt. Why would they want to cut down something as good as that? But right, you want to come back, Councillor Henwood?
Yes, please. There was a lot of concern about the sewerage because it's lower lying, and 36, 38 and 40 are sharing the sort of sewage, the canal, or whatever we call it. And where is the condition in this planning that relates to that? Condition 4? Chairman, is that right?
Is that correct?
Details of the
Yeah,
proposed.
you've got it there. You've got it nailed on the head. Condition 4.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
So you don't have to ask that question. It's
No.
there, black and white in front of you. Right, I'm looking for a proposer. Councillor DeBell, a seconder. Councillor Sweatman. Oh, yeah, I was looking over there, sorry. So we've got a proposer and a seconder. There is only one recommendation, and that is on page 57, 3.1. It is granted planning permission subject to conditions in Appendix A. So normally, green if you agree with it, red if you don't, and yellow if you abstain. So we're 10 to 1. Somebody is still one missing. Please tell me that's not me. Was Aidan, who's not? Councillor Henwood, you haven't? Okay. Okay. We've got 11 for it, 1 against it, so therefore that planning permission has been agreed. Thank you, Mr. Rodway. Right, we're now moving on to the third item on the agenda. My old stomping ground when I was the ward councillor now. It's item 7, it's DM 232398, land to the west of London Road, Hang Cross. We've just got to wait for a few seconds while Catherine sets herself up. In the meantime, can I get you to look at the update sheet? There are 2 updates on there. 2 conditions, condition 9 and condition 10. Are you ready to go?
Thank you, Chairman. The application is for the change of use from unused agricultural land to daycare facility for a doggy daycare to include a reception timber cabin and 4 timber cabins for dog shelters, reuse of existing access gate and fencing to the perimeter of the site. As we've already been directed, there are 2 additional conditions. The first one is to ensure that should the business cease on the land, that all the buildings and works shall be removed and the land returned to its existing state. And the other condition is to ensure that the number of dogs on the site at any one time does not exceed 30. The application site outlined in red includes the southwestern corner of the existing field, which is to the western side of London Road and to the eastern side of the A23. The site is located within the countryside area between Handcross and Pease Pottage and the High Weald area of outstanding natural beauty. The proposal would utilise the existing field entrance here and then access, which is the existing access to the Hyde Estate, onto the public highway. The perimeter of the field includes mature hedging and a number of trees, and this area directly to the western side of the site also includes a number of hedging and very small trees, and the boundary of the field is sort of outlined here with the black line. Also like to note the distances to the closest neighbouring properties. So there's 1 or 2 Nash cottages, which is approximately 78 metres from the site, and Hyde Lodge, which is some 68 metres from the site. The block plan of the proposal includes the perimeter 1.8 metre chain link fence around the site, and that would also cut through to divide up the 4 areas, as well as a washing area and a puppy creche area as well. Each section would include an area of decking, and each would have its own cabin shelter for the dogs. There would be a gravel parking area with a reception and a portaloo as well. There will be 3 employees at the site, each looking after 10 dogs, and the dogs will be rotated between the 4 areas to keep them occupied throughout the day. The dogs will be brought to the site by members of staff between 8:30 and 9:30 in the morning, and would be taken home between 3 and 4 p.m. This will be Mondays to Fridays and would not operate on evenings or weekends. West Sussex County Council Highways Authority have commented on the application, and this is set out on pages 104 to 108 of the agenda, and they consider there is sufficient parking and the proposal would not result in a severe impact on the operations of the highway network. And Environmental Health have also commented on the application. This is set out on page 104 of the agenda. There is no objection to the proposal, subject to conditions. This next slide shows the cabin which we use for the reception, which is a low-profile timber building with a very shallow mono-pitched roof. This slide shows the cabins. All 4 cabins would be exactly the same. and would provide shelter for the animals and the employees, and a portion of the chain link fence as well. Next are some photos from left to right. So from the left, looking north up London Road towards the site and the existing Hyde Estate entrance and the Hyde Lodge here. And the middle photo is from the other side of the entrance, facing back towards Hyde Lodge, and then Hand Cross beyond. And the right-hand side is down the entrance towards the entrance of the site. Next two photos taken along the access. So the existing gate entrance to the field is here, and this one is directly taken from the south of the entrance with the field beyond. And you can see the existing planting along this side and along the other side, bordering both highways. Next two is taken from the gate entrance itself, one facing up, back, along towards London Road, and then across the field. Nash cottages are here, and then Hyde Lodge is directly on the entrance there. The proposal is considered to be a small-scale economic development within the AONB, which, given the scale, form and position, is considered to conserve and enhance the AONB as set out on pages 97 to 100 of the agenda. The proposal is also not considered to cause coalescence between Hand Cross and Pease Pottage due to its scale, which is set out on pages 100 to 101. In terms of the impact on the amenities of neighbouring properties, given the separation distance of the proposal to the closest neighbours along the scales and hours of operation is not considered to cause significant harm. And this is on pages 103 to 4. I'd just like to also note that a number of the letters of representation received raise concerns which are not planning related, and this is set out on pages 93. Officers therefore consider that the proposal is in accordance with the development plan and is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Catherine. We have got some speakers, but before we go to remind members that this was called in by Councillor Prescott, the ward councillor, and myself to the effect on the ANOB. So we are in attendance. Right. So I'm going to ask the speakers to come to where you saw before. Steve Baldock, which is speaking against the application.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. It's really, really valuable. If I may, I'd like to add to the many detailed, technical and heartfelt objections already posted by so many from the village with a bigger picture perspective. Let's take a moment to stand back and reflect on the context of what's being proposed. Put simply, a very visible, valued and environmentally diverse agricultural site surrounded by ancient woodland is being jeopardised on behalf of a company external to the village, with external customers, and that brings no specific value to Hand Cross or to its residents. There are many alternative dog daycare businesses in existence already within the region. There is nothing unique about this site that lends itself specifically to what Rue Dog is proposing. But there is much that is unique about this site that will be irrevocably damaged by the changes that they plan. Put simply, this application seeks to change an ancient agricultural site filled with wildlife into one that facilitates the day-in, day-out driving of multiple van loads of dogs over considerable distances to then be deposited, allowed to run around before being driven back again. Hundreds and hundreds of dogs each year, and potentially more if approval to the concept of this plan is given. To allow such a repurposing of this site will permanently destroy its role as part of the environmental buffer that surrounds Hand Cross. Added to this, there is the visual and noise impact of the proposal on a site that is at the very entrance of the village, right next to residents' houses, close to the Hand Cross Primary School, and at the start of the Hyde Estate Walk, enjoyed by very many every day. Why place such a business on the proposed site? Surely there are more appropriate, less disruptive locations where so many dogs can be driven every day. Sites away from housing, a school and our village entrance. Sites not environmentally unique.
30 seconds.
I speak here with some emotion because I'm one of those living nearby who will be most affected by the barking, by the smells, by the traffic and all the other consequences, but I also believe that for the whole village, this proposal is entirely negative, completely ill-suited, and will destroy an environmentally rich, very visible and irreplaceable part of Hand Cross. With respect, I request those reviewing this proposal to reject it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I will now call Mr Paul Thornton, who's speaking on behalf of Marianne Butler against this application. Mr Thornton, you've got 2 minutes, and I shall remind you after 90 seconds, you've got 30 seconds left. The clock will start counting down the moment you start talking.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Good afternoon, members of the committee. The report and recommendation from your planning officer point to the fact you'll be granting this application. I intend to address you about how you can ensure the applicant sticks to what they've applied for, and you can do that by including a number of conditions on the permission. Incidentally, I must say that we are grateful for the update today and the additional condition limiting, or proposed condition limiting the number of dogs to 30 at the site. In order to open a doggy daycare facility, a licence issued by your licensing team per the Animal Welfare Regulations of 2018 is required. There are a number of other activities involving animals that do not require licensing. They are dog walking, training, grooming and behaviour services, and if brought into this site will add to the traffic and footfall. I would suggest the following conditions are placed on the licence in order to protect the integrity of the application and to ensure that the site is used for what the application applies for. And as I previously stated, the unlicensed activities are just that, and unregulated. So the first condition I would suggest would be no activity of the type described in the application form shall be undertaken at the site unless the requisite licence has been granted per the Animal Welfare Regulations by Mid Sussex District Council. For the benefit of doubt, that licence is actually issued by your licensing team on application. No dogs will be kept on the site overnight, and the facility will complete all pick up and drop off itself. Now, the dog care licensing is mentioned in the report, but this is but states this is dealt with under other legislation, and you can ignore any such conditions. You're not being asked to grant a licence under another scheme. We are merely saying that you are, by placing that condition on the permission, you are ensuring the integrity of the application. Thank you. Sorry, apologies for going over.
Thank you very much. It's okay. A couple of seconds is not a problem. I now call James Breckholl, he's an architect speaking for this application. As soon as you start speaking, the clock will start to...
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman and councillors. The people of Hand Cross have made a lot of objection to an insignificant and benign application. Many of the objections are based on having the wrong idea. When we read objections that consider this the creeping industrialisation of the countryside, or consider that it's doggy daycare now, but it's housing next, we must consider whether these objections are credible. Equally, people who live over 5 miles away and complain about noise disturbing them might be misplaced. Interestingly, if we were proposing 30 sheep on this site, planning permission would not be required. 30 horses or 30 pigs, no planning permission necessary. Another interesting statistic is that 70% of planning applications that are refused at committee are determined at appeal by following the officer's original recommendation. My guess is an appeals inspector would look at the application and consider if there is any precedent for this type of use in the countryside. Well, yes, there is. In Ditchling, there's a daycare facility for a far higher occupancy on a larger site. Is that a one-off? No, it's not. There's another one in Horsham. It can therefore be proven that this use can coexist in the countryside without causing a hindrance to residents or anyone else.
30 seconds.
The same people who object now will object to the local authority spending taxpayers' money on ill-fated appeals in 6 months' time. There is no correlation between doggy daycare and housing, nor is it an industrialised use of the countryside. Notably, all the local authority statutory consultees, and these are experts, have raised no objection. Thank you.
Thank you. I call Matt Rood, who's speaking as the applicant for this site.
Thank you, Chairman and Councillors. I'm Matt Reed, Director of Roo Dog. With more than a decade of experience in handling and training dogs, my passion for them is the driving force behind Roo Dog. Established in 2017 as a small dog walking company in Brighton, Roo Dog has since flourished. We now operate 11 vans walking more than 650 dogs each week. Our growth is attributed to exceptional customer service, uniformed personnel with ID tags, perks such as paw washing and GPS tracking on every single dog in my care. Roo Dog values its workforce of a core of 6 walkers who have been with me more than 4 years now. All our walkers have been DBS checked and attend first aid courses. We also undertake charity work. During the pandemic, through Age UK, we assisted the elderly by walking their dogs and getting their weekly groceries. Each Christmas, we support a chosen charity such as Sussex Homeless Support and Dogs Trust. This year, it will be the RSPCA in Brighton, and I know our loyal customers will donate blankets, dog food and toys. During the planning application, we have read all comments, taken them on board and made amendments to our submitted plans. And that's why your planning officers are recommending approval. The daycare would offer a high-end experience for our canine guests with 4 zones in which they can play, rest and use their senses. We would maintain a ratio of 1 to 10 staff to dogs. By keeping the dogs occupied, they are calm and quiet. Yes, they will run around, but a happy dog is a quiet dog. Any troublemakers or loud dogs will be trained not to be, and if that does not work, regrettably, offenders will not be able to attend our creche. Roo Dog works hard to maintain an ethical operation while serving the requirements of our customers. We like to employ people from the local community and contribute to it. I hope you feel confident that Roo Dog is in fact a good neighbour and that we will be able to support your officer's recommendation for approval. If you do have any questions about our company, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, it is a public meeting, but it's not a meeting in which we can ask questions. I'm now going to call Councillor Prescott, and members will know the ward councillors can speak. And Councillor Prescott is aware he can't speak forever and a day. Councillor Prescott.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, members. I called this application in for review because it generated more comments than any application I've seen in over 5 years as a parish councillor, and as a ward councillor, it has dominated my inbox for months. I would like to thank Catherine for a comprehensive committee report that does go some way to allay the concerns of some residents. However, I believe it falls short in a number of other considerations. Locally, this development is not wanted, needed or necessary in Hancross. It provides nothing to the community, and the application has caused considerable distress to neighbours both adjacent to the proposed location and from within the village. There are many relevant objections in this application, the key one being its location within the AONB, the removal of agricultural land that I must say is still very much in use, being grazed as recently as a few weeks ago. The lack of local need. There's an existing kennel business within the adjacent parish already offering similar services that may well be impacted by this application. As is seen within the application, the erection of timber sheds, chain link fencing and a portaloo do nothing to enhance the AONB, and the provision of a hard standing and car parking for up to 15 vehicles is removing viable farmland from a rural location. The planning officer has very helpfully pulled together all the relevant policies from the district plan, Slough neighbourhood plan and the NPPF. These policies can best be summarised as within the AONB, do no harm. The planning officer refers to the NPPF and in particular policy 85, which makes reference to policies and decisions needed to recognise that sites to meet local business and community needs in rural areas may need to be found adjacent to or beyond existing settlements and in locations that are not well served by public transport. It goes on to say, in these circumstances, it's considered important to ensure the development is sensitive to its surroundings, does not adversely impact local roads, and exploits any opportunity to make the location more sustainable by improving the scope for access on foot, by cycling or by public transport. The staff serving this proposal will use none of these, as they will travel in vans with their dogs. Policy 85 is also specific in recommending the use of previously developed land, and sites that are physically well related to existing settlements should be encouraged where suitable opportunities exist. This site does not meet that criteria. The planning officer goes on to say that she considers this application amounts to a new small-scale economic development within the AONB, and that the development of sheds and chain link fencing will respect the character of the countryside and the AONB. I beg to differ. Policy DP 26 and the Mid Sussex Design Guide both require a proposal to be of high quality design and include appropriate landscaping. Timber sheds, landscaping, timber sheds, chain link fencing and crushed stone hard standings again fall well short of this policy requirement in my view. Policy DP 26 covers protected landscapes, wildlife habits and the quality of people's lives, particularly with reference to noise. It goes on to say that if the proposal is likely to generate significant levels of noise, it must incorporate appropriate noise attenuation measures. It requires a design to control and minimise the impact of noise on health and quality of life, neighbouring properties and the surrounding areas. The proposed boundary of chain link fencing will neither control or attenuate the noise of dogs barking. The Council's Environmental Health Officer has recognised that the application's proximity to neighbouring residential properties has the potential to, and I will use his words, to significantly affect residential amenity by way of noise, particularly disturbance from dogs barking, howling, whining, etc. The officer goes on to say that the actual level of noise likely to be caused by the proposal is impossible to predict, as it depends on a number of variables, and requests a comprehensive noise management plan with controls and mitigations. The applicant has provided a noise control plan which makes for interesting reading and documents how the applicant will attempt to control noise. The key distinction here is an attempt to control and the ability to control with certainty the behaviour of a pack of up to 30 dogs. The document acknowledges that there will be noise, and whilst there are plans to stimulate the dogs, as a dog owner, I know dogs will be dogs. They will bark, they will get the zoomies, they'll ignore commands and generally run around noisily and disruptively. They are, after all, pack animals. I'm also certain that they will not have read the policy on noise, so will be blissfully unaware of what they should be doing and the rules that they are breaking. The question I keep coming back to, if it is impossible to predict noise levels and the applicant is unable to mitigate, what does this mean for the residents living adjacent to the site? It means they must put up with unreasonable noise and disruption when they previously went about their lives in quiet enjoyment. It means they will be forced to call out the enforcement team, the noise control team, the environmental team. The noise will be measured in dBs, a reading determined, a conclusion reached that yes, it is disruptive, loud, invasive, and it will miss the point because what can't be measured is the disruption and the deterioration to the quality of life and well-being for those who live next to it. Ask yourself, would you want to live next door to this proposal? I now want to move briefly on to transport. The transport plan submitted in support of the application states the staff will be bringing dogs from as far away as Hailsham, Lewes, Brighton, Hove, Shoreham, Worthing. I do not consider transporting dogs for up to an hour or more is serving a local need or the dog's welfare, and would respectfully suggest a site along the A27 corridor would better serve the identified market. West Sussex County Council Highways team have provided a detailed assessment of the site's location and its likely impact, recognising that staff will continue to commute to the facility in vans, increasing local road use and again demonstrating its lack of economic relevance to the local village. The planning officer's conclusion is that this application complies with district plan policies, Slough neighbourhood plan policies and the relevant NPPF provisions. That may well be a fair summary from a planning officer's perspective. What it does not address is the local lack of need and appetite for this poorly located proposal. The likely environmental impacts cannot be determined, and as the planning officers frequently advises, we must keep to the facts and use data to inform our planning decisions. Here there is no data, no established facts, just a presumption that it will all be okay. A failure to recognise the disruptive local impact and loss of amenity and quiet enjoyment for the neighbours. The site's location away from the identified market and the unreasonable proposition that transporting dogs for up to 2 hours is a good idea. And finally, condition 9 of Appendix A, which in summary says, if this is not used or doesn't work out, everything must be put back to how it was or is now. And the reasons which I have to say leaves, which I have to say leaves me dumbfounded, is to conserve the natural beauty of the high-wheeled area of outstanding natural beauty and to accord with policy DP 16 of the district plan and policy 1 of the Slough neighbourhood plan, which, if I'm not mistaken, contradicts the officer's recommendation for approval. So given all of the above, I would like to thank you for your time and respectfully ask that you refuse this application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Prescott. As I called this in, as Councillor Prescott, for members of the public, is a single ward council and we need 2 councillors. And as I intimated that I was the ward councillor there for 20 years, a couple of points were made about we haven't got anything like this nearby. Well, in Balcombe, where I live, Cherokee Kennels is there. I'm also the parish councillor for Turners Hill, and we've recently had a number of these type of applications come in. 4, if we remember them, yeah, and all 4 of them aren't in areas of outstanding natural beauty. So if you imagine, one side of the road is A&OB, the other side of the road, open countryside, and all 4 of those are outside the area of outstanding natural beauty. And I think the most telling mark that we had was the last paragraph as such is from Councillor Prescott. And the reason I called it in is the effect on the area of outstanding natural beauty. And he said if it's the condition 9 is if the company ceases to become a viable opposition, company, the area has to be restored to maintain the area of outstanding natural beauty. So therefore, to me, it's a contradiction. So I'm in the hands of the committee to see where they go for. So can I, Councillor de Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, am I right in saying that we've had this before us before? We've turned it round and round and round. We looked at the walking areas for the dogs and to make sure that there was plenty of room and for them to do so. Am I right in saying that? And the other thing, all right.
That was in Turners Hill.
The other thing that there seems to be a lot of concern about close proximity. Well, it's not really close to anybody as far as I can remember. And the other thing that I was going to say is, if this, if it was somebody wanting to stick a load of houses on this, I could well understand the concerns. But as we've heard about how this is going to be controlled and everything, and what good it does within and for the community, I'm mindful that this is something that I would certainly want to approve. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, thank you. No, that was the Turners Hill one. And
oh yes, you're right. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
That's okay. That again was called in by myself and Councillor Gibson. We wanted to see if this was a thing to be done in the countryside, and it was okay in the countryside.
Absolutely.
But that's the countryside.
Yeah.
This is not just ordinary countryside. This is area of outstanding natural beauty. And so therefore we have got to try and preserve and conserve
absolutely
the area of outstanding natural beauty. Yeah. So, Councillor Sweatman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I was going to mention Turners Hill, actually, because this is a very, very similar application to
almost
that.
Exactly the same.
Exactly the same. I think what you're saying is that this is on A&B, Turners Hill wasn't. But is it in our policy, I'm sure the case officer, Mr. Rogers, will correct me, is to promote small businesses in the countryside, even though it's on A&B? I do feel sorry for the residents, as I probably mentioned on the last time. If there's houses, dog barking can be quite annoying. However, I think the nearest house is about 64 metres away. And there are, on condition 4, it was mentioned about the environmental officer's comments, but if you look at condition 4, that is dealt quite comprehensively by the conditions there.
He's got to they've got to satisfy a noise management plan.
Yes,
with
as there's
our-
a few there for
They've got
persistently
to,
noisy
they've got to
dogs,
do all that.
etc.
We have actually, the condition 10, a little bit of that with the maximum number of dogs on the site is 30, so they've complied with that. Well, that's in that condition there. They have to comply with all the rest of the stuff before they get their licence, because as we all know, any dog establishment like this has to be controlled by a licence. And Cherry Kennels, I can guarantee, has to comply with that.
Absolutely, but the conditions there are not, like you say.
And you're right about the small businesses.
Yeah, and also just to reiterate the conditions of use, which is Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 1700 hours. So I think that's quite reasonable. I think I'd probably object if it was weekends when people can hear dogs depending on which way the wind's blowing in the distance. But so I'm quite happy. I think I can't really see. We've got to be careful. We sit here to determine planning applications. It's not a question, and a lot of members of the public know that, whether we like it or not. I think we have to look at what is in front of us and deal with the planning rules, as it were, to come to a conclusion. So looking at the policies, personally, yeah, I can sympathise with the residents, but I don't think there's a reason to refuse this. Thank you, Chairman.
Before I call Councillor Cherry, I'm going to ask Mr Rogers, because you mentioned policies, so Mr Rogers is going to clarify.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just to clarify the point about planning policy in AOMB, you know, policy DP 16 and 1 of the Suffolk Neighbourhood Plan do support small-scale economic development in the AOMB, but they must be compatible with the conservation and enhancement of the AOMB. So you don't ignore those key tests in the AOMB. So the discussion that you've been having are material planning considerations. You do need to take into account the impact on the AOMB, even if it is a small business. And even if you found that there was impact on the AOMB, you need to balance in the planning balance the economic development side of life. So it's more of a balance. It's not just you ignore the OMB, you have to take into account the conservation enhancement of the AOMB when you're looking at business uses as well. Thank you.
Members who've been here before, this is before the election, we did give a temporary planning permission in my ward, in my village, of the furniture makers, because it was in the area of outstanding natural beauty, but it was in the curtilage of the listed buildings. We only gave a temporary. Now that has been raised today by the officers, granting a temporary. So we have explored that. What we would normally go for is 3 years, but the applicant wanted longer as a temporary. So that's something we can think about. But our normal policy, if those remember as well, down in Hurstpierpoint, the car park down there, we gave permission for the storing of some children's equipment. I think it was in Porter Caverns. I'm getting some. No, I am getting some nods. But we did go outside policy there for 3 years to 4 years, and we said that's it. Once that 4 years is up, you've got to find another location for it. So anyway, I'm going to call Councillor Cherry.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. One, the report states that there would be three members of staff employed to look after the 30 dogs. I am presuming that they are not expected to do the driving as well. So I was a bit confused about that, and it's not clear on the report who's driving the dogs all these distances to
We'll
doggery.
get that answered in a second,
Right.
if we can. Hang on a sec, we might have your answer now.
Okay.
That's not something that's specifically mentioned, but they have to obviously come up with their vans with the dogs, so I'm afraid I can't confirm one way or the other, but...
Yeah, because it stated that they would be using up to 11 small vans rather than large vans, but obviously if they've only got 3 people working there, they would need much larger vans to house, up to 10 dogs. I'm assuming that they've got additional staff to do the driving. Otherwise, you're going to leave quite a few dogs with perhaps only one person looking after them, which might have impact on the noise level and, and general management of the premises. It's just not clear on the report how these things are going to be organised.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure that's relevant, but I think it's a good question, and because we're all flummoxed about that one. So we like questions like that. 11 vans were mentioned, and whether that's the company own 11 vans or they've got it, so I don't know. We can't ask the one of the speakers, because as we said, this is not a public meeting for that.
It's a shame actually, because they could probably...
It would have been, wouldn't it? But we are where we are.
Yeah.
Have you got any more?
Yes, I have. I've got another question on environmental impact. We've heard a lot about the impact from a noise point of view. How can I say this politely? But there's been no mention of what the sanitary arrangements for the dogs would be, and how the obvious waste matter is going to be dealt with, and that could have a detrimental effect on the environment. And again, there's absolutely no mention of that in the report.
Okay. Now I would like to hope that it's not a Mid Sussex District Council problem in terms of picking it up, because it's a business, so there's a whole new arrangements when it comes to business pickups. I'm looking at councillors saying you were in the catering business, I think, weren't you? Catherine, you've got an answer.
It's in their planning statement that they will arrange for a private company to come and get it, because it's not a Mid Sussex waste. They will not come and collect commercial, so it's a separate company that they will arrange. It's a private matter for the applicant to arrange that.
Right, but it wasn't. I couldn't find it in the report.
No, it wasn't mentioned in the report, because it's a private separate matter.
Yeah, because obviously it is an important part of the environment, it's, and particularly for the neighbouring houses, you do need assurance that that side of things is going to be properly managed.
There are a number of questions that you've just raised that's going flying through my head at this point in time. Licensed kennels, they have to have like heating, water, light, and stuff like that. I don't know if this is able to be provided on this site. Certainly we've heard about the water and the cleaning in the water. We don't know how the water is going to get to the site. And so it's all these questions that they have to get a licence for this to happen. So therefore the licensing officers will actually have to say, you have got to do this. Granting permission today or not granting permission today isn't the end of the game, because they have to have a licence. This is where the licensing regime is different from planning, and they don't fall together all the time. You can give plan permission, but the licensing team can say, actually no, so therefore they can't implement the planning permission. So it is a different regime altogether. I think I've got that one right. Yeah, I'm getting a nod from an ex-licensing officer. So I think I've got that one right. It is difficult, but that's the way it is. Have you got any more questions?
No, that's fine. Thank you very much.
If you can switch your Councillor Kenny.
So very interesting debate. I've got a couple of topics where I'm finding it hard to come to a conclusion, so I'm going to mention them. One is about the economic benefit, and the second is the impact on the area of national, and Nick or Catherine's comments would be very welcome. So I'm wondering how much economic benefit there is to the community. We've heard from the objectors, and they don't feel there's much to hang cross, and we've heard an explanation about how there will be a large amount of traffic into and then out of the area. Under our planning policies where we promote economic activity, what's the balance there? Is it for economic growth within Mid Sussex, or is it for activity that could spread as far afield as Lewes, Worthing or whatever? So I'm not sure how much, I'd be interested in comments, how much benefit we think there is to Mid Sussex community. On the area of Nick's comments about the planning and the area of natural beauty, the impact, it seems to me, on the area is wholly stressful. It's traffic arriving, potentially noise and other issues, which just seem to me in one direction. So whilst we do have a responsibility to promote development where we can, it's that, is it really sympathetic to only provide a stress without any providing back? So those are, I'd be interested in comments from the planning officers about to help me decide.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Maybe Catherine might have some detail about the economic side of life. I'll just comment on the AONB again, and as we've said before, it is a critical issue for this application, the impact on AONB, the character of the AONB, the natural beauty of the AONB. Those are matters of planning judgment, and the decision maker is the planning committee. So officers may have a view, and some members of the committee are entitled to take a different view. It's a matter of judgment. There's not much more I can say, really. Our view is that it is very modest development. It's the sort of stuff you might see in stable buildings and that type of thing. That's where we're coming from. But I can understand where others may come from a different way, a different direction. It's one of those ones where you have to balance everything up to planning balance and make an informed judgment. So I think the debate has been along the right lines, in my view, before you get to your conclusions. I don't know, Catherine, if you've got anything on the economic side of things?
In terms of the policy, it says that small-scale proposals which support the economy and social well-being of the AONB, and then it goes on to about conservation enhancement, but it doesn't actually specify what economy that is saying. That it's not specific to, is it the local village or the wider area? It's not specific regarding what level of economy that refers to. Yes, so it's on the Hyde Estate land. So they are taking out a lease on the land, and they will be employing people to run the business. So they're providing jobs there as well. In terms of other comments made on vehicular movements, it will be reduced. So it's not the owners of the dogs bringing them up. They'll be brought into vans. I think we're going between 8 and 10 dogs per van. So it's reducing the number of vehicular movements each day as well. Yeah.
Councillor Henwood.
I likewise have very concerned about what economic value it will have for the community. They will be coming from outside the community, so I have a real question about that. I have a question very much about the DP16, which is the high wheels, yeah, and it says should not adversely affect the views into and out of. So it's not just within this area of outstanding natural beauty, it is the views into it and out of it which would be affected by having this chain link fence and this constructor. I'm also, DP26 was said, which says we should protect open spaces and trees which continue which contribute to the character of the area, and this obviously open field contributes to the character of the area. I'm also curious about how DP 29, which goes on about noise, I don't quite know how an assessment of the impact of the noise of the dogs will be assessed. That's DP 29. I'm just looking at DP policies, just trying to point out some policies that I feel this particular application might contradict.
Thank you. I think it's down to me now to speak. It was a very interesting debate, I've got to say, and some questions have been asked that have questioned my thought process on the whole process. I don't think this particularly is a sustainable business from a sustainable transport point of view, because, you know, when you've got, I will use in my village, Cherry Kennels, the vast majority of the people who use Cherry Kennels come from within the village or within a 2-mile radius, say Hand Cross, Pease Pottage. They do, because I use it. I use Cherry Kennels. So the question you've got to ask yourself, Catherine, could you just remind the committee what the actual car park surface is going to be, please?
It's gravel.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was. Just wanted to make sure that everybody read that part of it all. It's gravel. So again, we have put in condition 9 that the buildings and work should be permitted, hereby permitted, shall be removed, and the land restored back to its formal condition or a condition agreed in writing by the local planning authority, should the use of this on this subject permission ceases. I've not heard any real reason other than the fact there is some sort of economic benefit, but it's not economic benefit for Hand Cross. There is no economic benefit for Hand Cross. Economic benefit for the landowner, because they are going to be leasing the site out to the applicant, and so the landowner is going to benefit, but I don't think Hand Cross is going to benefit from it. As we've said, the actual, it's all subject to the license being granted, and they've subject, you know, if they can do the noise management plan. You've got to weigh up small businesses, economic development to the benefit of the village. This is in the one down in Macon and Son, if you remember that one in Balcombe. A lot of the people who worked on that site making furniture either lived in the village or down in Cookfield and within the area around Balcombe. These dogs are coming from as far afield as Worthing, Hailsham. You know, we're talking an hour plus journey. So the only people I can see who are going to benefit are the petrol stations for getting them there, and the car manufacturers and the landowner, and obviously the site. Now, the one thing which I do find, and I think it was Councillor Prescott or the first speaker, there are sheep on that and have been sheep on that as long as I've ever lived in this part of the world. And there's no point shaking your head, sir, but I have been the ward councillor for Hand Cross for over 20 years, and I do know there are sheep who go on that site, so it's not unused. So I do know that for a fact, because I have eyes. So, Councillor DeBell, you wish to come back?
Yes, I do, actually. I think, from everything that I've heard personally today, I think that the most important consideration for me is because, as you know, I mean, a business is a business wherever it's put or whatever, and I don't think that that's particularly relevant in this case for me. But the environmental health officer has said the proximity of the site to residential premises, and I'm coming back on the confusion that I had with the other one that we were talking about. The proximity of the site to residential premises has potential to significantly affect residential amenity by way of noise, particularly disturbance from dog barking, howling, whining, etc. We've heard the mitigation that says that that will not happen. I think that this, for me, is going to be the biggest consideration. Is it going to be, basically a pain in the backside alongside residents? And I think that that's the crux of what we're actually looking at today, for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor de Bell. Well, there is a recommendation to approve. I do need people to make a recommendation and second it. So can I have somebody who's in support of this? Councillor Sweatman, do you have a seconder? Councillor Hitchcock. So the officer's recommendation that this should be granted permission. If you agree to it, it's green. If you don't agree with it, it's red. If you abstain, it is yellow. Okay, well, Councillor Bashir has had to leave, so we've only got 11 people here. He's got an emergency, he's had to leave to go. That's why he's not here. So we've got 3 in support of the application and 8 against the application, so therefore that has been refused. And now, do we have to go for reasons?
Yeah, we need to have what is the reason for refusing? Alternative motion to refuse.
All right, I need an alternative motion to the reasons for refusal and
The reason.
the reason. Do I need to do it as calling?
Can I help on the reason?
Yes.
If only listening to what committee have been saying, and if I'm wrong, tell me. This is just my interpretation of the discussion. So we're making some notes about potential reason for refusal that you might wish to vote on. I've just noted here, the proposed development will be located on an open field within the Highwood AONB. Use of land for daycare for dogs, stationing of ancillary timber outbuildings, associated fencing and hard standing would fail to conserve and enhance the natural beauty of the area, contrary to the requirements of DP16, the Mid Sussex District Plan, and Policy 1 of the Slutham Neighbourhood Plan and Para 176 of the NPPF. That's my judgment of what's been said. But
Councillor Henwood.
I'm suggesting also about DP 29, about noise, because that DP 29 talks about the noise, and we've had, like Councillor de Bell has mentioned, that he feels that's a very important consideration. Does it hurt to put in what we feel is important?
You can't put in,
We can't
Mr.
add it
Rogers.
later.
Well, the problem we've got, it's got to be reasonable. And 29, DP 29 is reasonable to put in, but I'll ask Mr. Rogers to
yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's about evidence. If you have a reason for refusal, if you go to an appeal, you have to evidence that appeal. The evidence we have at the moment is from our environmental health officer, who is not objecting, subject to the condition. So the evidence that we would have is supposition and what people think might happen. That isn't sufficient to defend an appeal.
and that could cause a problem if it goes to appeal, that we could be lumbered with costs on that one. So you've, the proposal, can you read that out again?
It's basically, as I say, it's about the impact of the development on the Highwood AONB. So my notes here is the proposed development would be located on an open field within the Highwood AONB. The use of the land for daycare for dogs, the stationing of the ancillary timber outbuildings, associated fencing and hard standing would fail to conserve and enhance the natural beauty of the area, contrary to the requirements of DP16 of the Mid Sussex District Plan, Policy 1 of the Slutham Neighbourhood Plan, and Paragraph 176 of the National Planning Policy Framework.
Don't go for overkill.
It's not actually within.
What do you mean within?
Is this with, I thought this was just on the fringe of the area of outstanding
No,
natural
it's not, it's
resources.
well within.
Oh, well, then, that's obvious, we should oppose it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my vice chairman.
We talked, and Councillor Kenny talked about the economic benefit. Is it worth putting something in about that? Because any economic benefit from the discussions we've had would appear certainly to be marginal for the area about which, or related to the area of the application.
The problem with that, councillor, is quantifying what the economic development benefit might be. And it may be argued that the Hyde Estate, who are landowners in Hancross, will benefit. So again, I personally, and again, I'm in your hands, but I would not be recommending that you put that in as a reason for refusal. I would stick to something that we can actually justify and support, which is the reason I have just read out and which I've been picking up from the debate. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's only one benefitor there, and that's the landowner. And good question though, but I think that we've got to, it's Mr. Rogers or Catherine's got to go to, if this is appealed, she's the one who's got to defend it on behalf of, and that again is a bit like the noise. It's difficult to be able to sustain that. So, so can I have a proposer for, and the final words will be in conjunction with officers and the chair and vice chairman, but you've seen what we want to do.
I will propose.
Seconder, Councillor Cherry. Okay, now we need a vote again, so the vote is to refuse, because it is contrary to the area of outstanding natural beauty and doesn't conserve or enhance. So, green if you support the reasons to refuse, and no. We had the substantial was the recommended for what the officers recommended. Now we've got to do the reasons, the recommendation to refuse. So basically, it's kill the recommendation to approve of, and now we've got to do on the. Do you want to?
Yeah, basically, this is the second motion now, which is to refuse the planning application for the reason that I just read out.
So if you agree with the reasons that Mr. Rogers. If you don't want to support it, you're well within your rights to abstain. We've got two people who have not voted. Okay. We have got 8 people in support of the reason to refuse it as read out, 2 people who don't agree with that, and 1 abstaining. So it has now been refused. Thank you. That application has been refused. Thank you very much. Now we've got to I've got to read out a reasons. I've got to clear the chamber basically of everybody apart from members of this committee. So I've got to read it out, then you can do a runner. It is to consider whether to exclude the press and the public from the meeting during the consideration of the following items in accordance with section 100A of the the Local Government Act of 1972, on the grounds it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1, 2 and 7 of Part 1 of the Schedule 12A of said Act. Basically, we're going to hear some confidential stuff, so I do ask you have to leave the chamber, please. Councillor Prescott can stay there, can't he? Are you going, Councillor Prescott? You're entitled to stay if you wish. gone home anyway.
If my satellites like to get lost, my windows are like to get broken.
Yeah, we're on live feed. Okay, thank you. So, item 11 is questions pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10.2. Due notice of which being given. I have none, so I close the meeting at 4 minutes past 6. Thank you for your attendance. Can you all, the blue ones, could you give that back to Lucinda? They have to be shredded.